Welcome to this week's asynchronous assignment. We are going to be talking about project management. We will go through a lecture, we will go through a fantastical example of a project, and then you will have a group assignment, I said group, that will be due on Tuesday before class. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Well, let's go over our objectives for today. The first, what is project management? What do we mean when we say project management, and what are our expectations? Why is project management so important? Why is there a whole lecture and a whole assignment on it? How exactly do we manage our projects? And then you will have a group assignment, which will be due on Tuesday before class, and that's how you're going to apply these new project management skills. We will be going through today's objectives by choosing an example and managing this example project. So now it's time for me to do my voices. As a seasoned professor at the Eldritch Academy of Dark Magic, you have worked your way up the ranks. But in order for you and a few of your fellow professors to be appointed tenure, you must successfully perform a lich ritual. And you were quick to volunteer to be the normal being that transforms into a lich. If performed correctly, the ritual drains the soul from the body, killing anyone who failed to perform it right, or anyone not strong enough to handle the stress of their soul leaving their body. Hides it in an object, and transform the caster into a lich. So let's navigate through this example and go step by step. The first step is, what is project management? It is a structuring of steps that help you reach a specific goal within a set of constraints. The Academy expects thorough documentation of the ritual process to get a full understanding of the team's work. So let's define some constraints that we are working under in order to successfully perform this lich ritual so that we can get tenure. We've got a budget constraint. Luckily, the university has a pretty hefty budget for dark sorcery. Your team has a lot of creative freedom. Sometimes there might be a budget constraint, and you'll have to work within those budget constraints. Let's go over what materials we might need for this lich ritual. We'll need 1 vial of water from each of the 5 underworlds, bone of the ancestor, and blood of the caster, a vial of hydra venom, mummy linen, a vial of ghost ectoplasm, 4 vampire fangs, 1 vial of gorgon blood, specifically from the left side, and lastly, a phylactery. We will also probably be working under some time constraints, right? Like, we have to get this done within the fall 2022, not 2021, sorry about that, semester. You must complete the ritual successfully by the end of the semester. We also might be operating under some other constraints as well. In this example, it's dangerous. You and your team need to perform efficiently under these constraints to avoid death. So let's talk about a project management life cycle. The first step in this project management life cycle is initiation. We need to do a couple things. We need to define our key players, and we need to agree about what's about to happen. So key players are like clients, or they could be team members. And then you all need to work together to decide on discrete objectives for your project. The second step in the life cycle is planning. You need to delegate tasks, identify steps it will take to achieve project goals, identify project milestones, like various deadlines, and figure out like what else? Do we need to order more materials? Do we need to, think about when materials will get here, etc., etc., etc. Planning is about defining the work that will go into the project. The third step in the project management lifecycle is execution. It's when you do the dang thing. Organized and systematic collaboration. So team members can collaborate on tasks within a specific project management software. You can mark them as complete as they progress, and you can track time spent on tasks, and you can also identify blockers. What do you think I mean when I say something like blockers? Well, I know a couple of you who've experienced blockers this semester. One blocker is that the Arduino took forever to be delivered to you. So we are continuing lecturing about using the Arduino and programming the Arduino and making circuits, but you don't have the Arduino. And so you can't fully execute those tasks in those lectures and those assignments because one blocker is that you haven't gotten the Arduino yet. So when you're managing a project and you're in this execution step, this execution phase of the project management lifecycle, you'll need to actively be figuring out, hey, what are some blockers or some potential blockers, and how can we make sure to identify them and also plan around them. The last step of our project management lifecycle is the sign-off. All parties are happy. We pop the proverbial bubbly. The project management process is invaluable during creative sign-off. It can make the work of the creative team quantifiable. You can define how much work went into creating something. And it helps you define the worth of that project. So, why do we need project management in the first place? There are so many reasons. Maybe just take a second and pause the video and think about times in your life that a project wasn't managed well, whatever that means to you. Can you think of a time where a project was managed well? Can you think of how successful those projects were depending on the project management process that you had? There are lots of benefits to good project management, which is why we use them in this class. First, break it down. Your project will always require some administrative elements. Project management gives you a framework to break these aspects down into manageable chunks. It's kind of a theme of this class, right? Take a big problem and break it down into manageable chunks. The second benefit is it helps you establish expectations and boundaries to support your team and yourself. When you have clearly defined goals, you can work with your team in a way that respects your time and your effort. Lastly, documentation. Even for powerful wizards, memories fade. Thorough documentation can help avoid mistakes and ultimately paint a bigger picture of what your team has accomplished. So how do we manage this particular project, the Lich Ritual? So we've laid out the what and the why of project management, but how is our team going to utilize project management in the Lich Ritual? First, initiation. The first step in our project management lifecycle. Who are our key players? Well, we've got our team, the professors, who want tenure. And we have the board that will make a final decision. The board is like our clients, and our team is like, well, our team. We're also going to define some objectives. We need to perform the Lich Ritual successfully with thorough documentation, and we need to present yourself to the board as a new Lich. the second step in our project management life cycle, planning. Here is where we delegate our tasks to complete the project. We have a curator. They will be collecting all necessary materials from across the realm. Next, we have a scholar. He will be identifying project constraints and research the documentation of those who have attempted this in the past to make sure we don't make the same mistakes. Then you have an alchemist. She will be in charge of the mixing the materials into a cauldron. And then we have you. You are the leader. You will delegate the tasks and execute the final spell. But there's another step to our planning phase of the life cycle of project management. We have to determine milestones, deadlines, time frames. Oh my. We need to collect materials. This will probably be our first milestone, as we cannot progress through the project without our materials. Then we want to finish research on past attempts. Lastly, we want to mix the ingredients together. And finally, we will want to perform the ritual and say the spell. Now on to execution. How do we collaborate in an organized, efficient, and systematic way? Well, workflow, of course. What is that? Oh, it's just the systematic approach to the collaborative process. We can use project management software to keep track of all of the moving parts of a project. It helps execute a workflow that works best with your project. Here's the most important part: documentation. We want to clearly write down the various decisions, directions, and insights. We want to clarify the project requirements and specifications, and we want to do this before you begin your project. It helps organize your thoughts. There's no ambiguity. It streamlines your design implementation. Documentation should be consistent, dated, prioritized, and treated as a living project in and of itself. Now let's get into something fun. Ever heard of Agile methodology? Agile methodology is proven, effective, overarching ideals and principles that are used to break projects down into smaller chunks. Not to mention, it allows for us to test them along the way. I'm going to stop this voice for a second. Do you remember all of the TikToks that you had to watch this past weekend? Well, what we did was we broke down all of the components of our circuit and we tested them to see if they worked before we built out our logic in pseudocode and then code. So we can do this with larger projects as well. There are a couple different methods to Agile methodology that we're about to talk about. The first is called Kanban, and Kanban essentially is all about visualizing your work. So it means limiting the work in progress and focusing on flow. You have continuous deliverables. You can use something called a Kanban board, which is what we'll be using this semester. One is called Trello. We'll get into that in a second. But essentially, a Kanban board has like these columns. There's to do, there's doing or in progress, and there's done. And we want to make sure that items on these little sticky notes are being quickly moved along the timeline from to do, to doing, to done. It's a very flexible method of project management, and there aren't really roles required. The second method is Scrum. Scrum is a little different. You work in intervals called sprints, and you have a deliverable at the end of each sprint. We'll be doing more Scrum work in this class. You adopt specific rules, and you hold regular meetings to keep things moving forward. So there's a couple of different examples that we can talk about as far as what we mean when we say project management software or agile software. What we will be using in this class is called Trello. And as you can see, it's very similar to the picture we had right here, where there's a to-do, doing, and done column. There are all of these little cards here that we can move around from to-do to in progress to done. It's super helpful when you're trying to work collaboratively on a large project, so we can see what is in progress, who needs help with what, who's in charge of what. And then there's Jira, which is another similar project management software. We won't be using this as much, but I just want to call attention to the fact that there are tons of project management softwares out there, and depending on your job in the future, your company might require you to know one or the other. There's also this software called Gantt. It's kind of like a bar chart, and it illustrates like a lot of project scheduling. This is the fun part. It's the sign-off. So now, go to Canvas. Check out the assignment. It has way more details than what I have on this slide. You will be working in groups. Those groups you will find in an Excel file. It's linked in the assignment. You will be in charge of finding your group members on Discord, contacting them, planning your group work. It's gonna be fun. Essentially what you're gonna do is choose another magical ritual or fantasy project or adventure even, but key is here, you need to have a final deliverable. The world is your oyster. We just want to see you pick a creative, fun project. It can be literally anything, and play a little pretend. What would it take to manage your project from concept to completion? I cannot wait to see what you come up with. If you all have any questions, you know where to find us. We're always on Discord. Have fun. Thanks for listening. See you later.